Okay, welcome to the Airiam Podcast. This podcast covers topics related to cyber and human resilience. It's geared towards owners and CEOs of small to medium-sized companies, as well as IT and cybersecurity leaders. My name is Bill Bowman. I'm the marketing director here at Airiam. The co-host for today's episode is Airiam Field CIO and CISO, Art O'Kane. Art, how are you doing today? Staying caffeinated, staying motivated, amped up?
I'm working on it.
Oh, hey, that's as we speak in the process. So great to hear. Our topic for this week's episode is penetration testing. We're going to go over why it's helpful for organizations in the first place, and then we're going to talk about how it's done traditionally versus what new technology and what new advances are in the marketplace that's going to really revolutionize the way that companies do penetration testing. And our guest to run us through a lot of this is Alex Diaz. Alex is an expert in cybersecurity. He is currently the customer success lead at Horizon3. Before Horizon3, he spent many years in intelligence positions within the U.S. military and government. So Alex, how are you doing today?
Gentlemen, how's it going? Appreciate you having me on today and looking forward to chatting with you guys.
Awesome. So Horizon3 enables organizations to continually assess the security posture of their enterprise across many attack surfaces. In recent months, or probably almost half a year ago or so, our Airiam partnered with Horizon3 to provide their service to some of our clients. And the end result of that was a lot of our clients really got better insights into their IT environment, and they were able to make a lot of different security enhancements. So that sets the stage for things. And before we, kick it off and talk about penetration testing, what all that means, we do have one question that we ask every guest. So that question is, Alex, how do you start your day? What gets you going to have a great day and get you set up for success?
That's a great question. So we have what actually happens and what I would like.
We want the real story here.
Ideally, it would be get up, take a cold shower, and probably hop on the Peloton and do just a quick 25-30-minute workout. What actually happens is I go out, take my dogs out, I help them do their business, and I come right in and get to work. So maybe I'm successful 2 out of 5 days out of the week.
So you're not messing around. No time to get the dog, get the business, got the work. So that's getting to it. So Alex, what in your role as a customer success lead at Horizon3, what are you doing the day to day? How do you help clients overall? And then we can kind of get into the details of penetration testing and
those. Cool. So I think customer success is something that should really be differentiated from customer support. So if I'm going to quantify my role and really what my relationship looks like with you guys, with other customers, I think it really revolves around empowerment. So in general, we wear tons of hats. We're advisors, we're mediators, we're sounding boards, and ultimately our job is to empower the user, whether it be a partner, whether it be a direct customer, to really be the superhero of their own story. So, I want Airiam to go out and go talk to their end users and really be the superhero. Said, hey, we've worked with you guys. We've identified what these weaknesses should be prioritized. We really need to focus on these, and really just being able to tell that story with them. But yeah, we really just do everything. In some organizations, we act more as advisors, where we may have red team and blue team, and they're not necessarily working very well together. So we'll inject ourselves in and really try to take that purple team perspective and try to make them, play nice and say, hey, our tool can really, tell both sides of the story. We can make the red team more efficient, while at the same time, we're not just poking and saying, hey, you're weak here, go fix it. We're actually giving those step-by-step fix actions that are readily available, easily accessible, and easy to follow.
Nice. So you're kind of the connector in a lot of the sense, but making the customer successful. That's awesome.
I think, a big part of it is trying to do this proactively, and that's really where the success is. because support is reactionary most of the times. It's, hey, I'm having an issue with something. Let me go dive into the team that I know is there and try to get something fixed. And really, our whole point is to almost work ourselves out of the solution. We want to have that user, be so enabled and understand the product so well that they're not really having those friction, or they're not having that friction. They're not necessarily having those questions. So that's really the way that I view the role here as customer success within Horizon3.
And one of the interesting things about Horizon3 is that everybody that works there, well, not everybody, but a large majority is, cybersecurity trained from military experience and things like that, and or has extensive, security experience before that, before working for H3. And so, where in some companies, as customer success lead is almost just like an expediter, with Horizon3, the customer success lead actually understands the product and understands what we're working with and understands the obstacles ahead of us. So, that's one thing that I've found unique when working with the Horizon3 team and with Alex is he actually knows his stuff, and he's actually there to really help us help our clients.
Awesome. So that that talks about Horizon3, about your role. Then getting a little bit back to basics. So for average small business, average medium-sized business, how can a penetration test help them in the first place? And then, what is the activity involved? What's been done traditionally in terms of pen tests or vulnerability scans? As a novice coming to it, what's the end result that's going to help that small business owner with 100 employees or a manufacturer? Why does this conversation matter to them at all? So, for Alex, if you can kind of talk about that a little bit, that will help set the stage even more.
Yeah, I'd love to. So you mentioned vulnerability scanning, vulnerability, essentially management, and I think that's really the divide, right? Where our tool comes in is we want to enable customers, partners to really both validate and prioritize findings. So where a vulnerability scanner may come in and it may give you a laundry list of CVEs that exist. Art may have heard this. Art actually came out and spent a couple of days with us for a conference a couple weeks ago. But he probably heard this. It's probably ingrained in his mind that vulnerable is not equal exploitable. And that really is the driving force behind the product itself. We want to take that whole laundry list that may be generated from a vulnerability scanner and really point the end user in the direction that says, hey, you had this whole list. We've dwindled that down to things that are exploitable. Now let's see if we combine these, what is the true kind of combinatorial outcome, critical impact of chaining these exploits, weaknesses, known attacker methods together to gain an impact. And that's really where that penetration testing comes in, is we're kind of taking those, post-exploitation steps of saying, this exists, now let's say this is exploitable. And the impact is something that you as an organization, big or small, may need to cut your lunch short over. Hey, this may be domain compromise. Hey, you may right now be vulnerable and exploitable to ransomware. So things like that is really where that divide comes in, is we really want people or customers to be super efficient in just prioritization of weaknesses and non-attacker methods.
Super useful, because when we're looking at thousands of vulnerabilities at a client, that may have, a ton of devices, and we're trying to figure out really how to secure that client when we're managing their security. And, if we're looking at really patching every vulnerability, that may be a goal in the end, but it may not be practical or possible because of legacy equipment, whatever. There may be something in production that we can't patch. There may be situations where we're just, overwhelmed, and NodeZero really helps us prioritize those and really shows us which things matter. And that's something that we don't even get out of a human pen test. It's a human pen test. We have, we got domain compromise. Yay, here's what we did to accomplish that. But NodeZero is recursing through all the possibilities and really showing us the 10 things that matter most, in this network, that kind of thing. And that is extremely valuable to someone trying to manage the security of an organization.
Yeah,
So
and that thread, a lot of it's based on context scoring. So we may see something like SMB sign not required. In and of itself, isn't a true critical impact. But when you chain that becomes the gateway to open up more and more doors. That one weakness, which, in certain people's eyes, certain organizations' eyes means nothing. Oh, we'll work through it. Now becomes that linchpin, and that, if I had a neon sign that I could circle around the weakness, which we do that through the attack graphs essentially. But this would be the thing that says, fix this now, because this single weakness was in the most impact path in the pen test that occurred in your environment. So fixing this one thing has the furthest reach in hardening and strengthening your environment.
Nice. So every organization has, servers, computers, people. What's the difference between an organization that proactively seeks out penetration tests, proactively tries to test their defenses, and a company or organization that never does it? I'm sure a lot of, I guess, Art or Alex, you can speak, what percentage of companies are active in doing this, and what percentage just don't even think about it, don't do it? And then what's the risks if you don't conduct these penetration tests on either autonomous, like we're going to talk about later, or quarterly, like with a traditional method?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have the numbers to say, hey, these are the ones I'm going to hang my hat on. But I think the point you brought up earlier, and I think this ties into this, is customers, large and small, and within that kind of, when you're looking at organization, each of it has kind of their pros and cons within the organization. So a small organization, they're probably lacking some type of true security team. They're often lacking resources. Sometimes they may be lacking talent, just because talent's expensive. Where you look at a large company and they may have all this stuff. They may have a whole suite of tools. But I think what it really comes down to, and why you're pen testing, is to really validate and affirm that those tools are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. I know later on we'll get into a little bit more of what we saw through our years of pen tests. Like, we actually just kicked off generated our year in review for last year, and we went through and identified all the weaknesses that we saw. But yeah, one of them specifically was around, hey, I'm a large company. I have this whole Rolodex of security tools, but I've actually never gone through and tested and validated that they're doing what they should be doing. Where a small company, they have day-to-day operations to run through. I used to own a small company myself, and I'll tell you, cybersecurity was not top of mind.
I can imagine.
I had day-to-day operations, and it fell back. And I was one of those that said, all right, well, I have PCI coming up. I got to do this once a year and check the block and move on. But when you're a small business, your focus is on productivity and on revenue. You don't necessarily have the resources and the time to have that focus internally to look at cybersecurity.
I'd say that most companies, unless they're required to for some regulatory reason, most of them aren't going to go out of the way to get a pen test done. They may want one, they may be curious about what their impacts look like and things like that, but they can be expensive. So they most companies avoid them unless they have to. So that's really where Horizon3 has allowed us to provide that service to companies that really would not be able to swing a quarterly human pen test, because of that cost. So it's allowed service providers like us to be able to really provide that enterprise level kind of examination of security to those smaller companies that normally would never ever pay for a pen test. So to me, that's extremely valuable.
Yeah.
Nice. So the traditional pen test, you engage with the person. They got a team of guys in hoodies, they're on computers testing now. Ethical hacking. So that the traditional method, more expensive, and it might miss some things. So Alex, what kind of piece of software, what can the NodeZero software solution do that a person can't do when it comes to testing? I guess we mentioned might be more economical, but I assume there's other benefits and other elements to the solution as well.
Yeah, sure. I'd probably quantify it as the ability to operate at speed and scale is really, so within that, there are certain aspects of repeatability. There's aspects of scheduling. So all those things combined is really where, to me, that tool can do things that a human attacker can't. You mentioned, hey, there's a process to bring on a human pen tester. By our numbers, that takes about 3 months or so. 110 days is about what we're saying. And that's really from the point that a customer says, I need a pen test. They're going to reach out and say, all right, there's some pen testers local, or hey, I'm going to go reach out to some other large organization. I have to get on their schedule. I have to onboard them potentially if they're going to be doing something on site. I got to give them credentials. I got to give them access. I got to give them site access. They're going to run their pen test. They're going to go back home, take a couple of weeks to generate the report, and then I'm going to get that report. So that metric for us is time to remediation. So the second they said, I want a pen test, if there was a weakness existing at that time, an organization truly wouldn't know until about 3 months after. So that's really where NodeZero comes in. And, we operate, or NodeZero can operate autonomously. It operates on a schedule, so it's something that can be scheduled, and it's repeatable. So now an organization can run a test, and let's say it takes, depending on how large it is, 50 hosts to 50,000 hosts. We've seen that whole scale as far as pen tests within our product. It may, complete in a couple hours, it may complete in a couple days. But again, that time remediation is condensed down where, we're seeing organizations that essentially have 99% efficiency, where as opposed to 3 months getting a report that says, hey, this host has a weakness, within hours, they're not only validating that the host has a weakness, but are going in and fixing it. Of course, that goes through change management process, and large organizations have a lot more hoops to jump through, where if it's just a, 2-man shop or 1-man shop, he's going to read our report, go in and say, okay, step 1, download this patch. Step 2, implement patch. Step 3, validate and verify. That's the key. Because as we know, customers may tell you, they tell us, hey, I fixed that already. That can't be. Say, no, the proof's there. Let's go ahead and run through this again. Let's implement this patch again, and let's validate through the tool that you've actually remediated this weakness.
Yeah, I think at one point you had consistency. So you do penetration tests with different companies. They have wholly different methods of doing it. Your reports are going to look different. The cost is going to be different. They may be in the US, they may be in South America. So that consistent element, I'm sure, can help you compare, year over year or month over month. How are we doing? And it gets rid of a lot of the noise that might come from the manual element of a penetration test. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that hardening over time is really, I think, what C-suiters are looking for, right? It's if I'm investing time, talent, treasure into this tool, I'm investing my personnel, I'm investing money, I'm investing time that they could be doing something else. They want to see that day one they started, they may have had 40, 50, 100 impacts. And 3 months in, they've dropped that down to 70, 6 months in. And really, the point to what you said, Bill, is you have to be able to compare apples to apples. 2 human pen testers look at the environment completely different. They have different backgrounds, they have different specialties. So you may get reports that are vastly different in the same environment. With us, it's that repeatability. It says, hey, you can rerun the same exact test, use the same exact advanced configurations, and we'll give you a true apples to apples comparison. So that you can hang your hat on this and say, oh, I'm 100% sure that, that I've actually, or my team has actually went through and we've actually hardened the environment, per what's presented in the product.
Nice. So talking about a little bit about how it's done. What's the analogy? How's the sauce made or whatever? How's the the big thing on a lot of people's minds this year is, the AI, you get the chat GBT. None of this episode was written by chat GBT, so I can attest to that. But, how does a piece of software, how does it do all that, in layman's terms, possibly, since the details are probably beyond my comprehension. But how does it do that to provide value for the users to get that, result that helps people understand where they are?
Yeah.
Organizations where they are.
Yeah, kind of the way I see it is the sauce is being made, but if you're not able to actually understand and interpret what's on the back end, then truly it's not even worth going through the process. So yeah, the tool does some amazing stuff. Essentially what we're doing with a test is NodeZero is going out and it's creating a terrain map of an environment. Big thing it's looking at host and it's looking at services. Those two things are what's going to fuel our AI, which in our case we use a decision-making process, Markov decision process. And that's going to say, okay, well, I see this host and this service is running on it. I have my Rolodex of potential attack modules. I know that this module runs over 445. Well, let's go ahead and throw this at it and see whether we can gain exploit. Now we have 2 weaknesses. Is there a way to chain these weaknesses? We have 100 weaknesses, 1,000 weaknesses. How can I parlay these in order to get to what we deem a critical impact? And a critical impact is really that business impact. It could be something along the lines of sensitive data exposure, where we can read files, or it could go up to ransomware exposure. We can read and write to files. But to kind of bring it back, so essentially the product has a near infinite amount of combination of attacks. And we use a decision-making process in order to essentially say, hey, NodeZero, what single action or combination of actions can occur in order to drive an impact?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's worthwhile to mention how valuable the human aspect still is in Horizon 3, the attack team, and the input that the attack team brings to developing those exploits, that then the machine learning decision making is using those exploits that are developed by that team. So it's really you have pen testers that are developing those processes that then are implemented by machine learning in NodeZero. So there's a lot under the hood that's going on.
Yeah, and that gets to the concept that Alex kind of briefly mentioned on the buzzwords, the red team, the blue team, and the purple team. Everyone's on a team. So the red team will use the tool in certain ways to be able to understand how to test it. The blue team, the defenders can use the tool to remediate, and then the combination of the 2 teams is the so-called purple team, right? Is that the modern definition of those elements? And larger companies, they'd probably employ those. Smaller companies, they wouldn't really think about those teams. Are those the dynamics in the industry that's still present?
No, yeah, I think you're spot on. If we're talking about a small company, like it may be the owner may be the CISO,
one-man team,
the COO, he may be the CEO. He's going to wear all those hats, and yeah, exactly. There is no team. They may be lacking some specialty, and yeah, that's really where this tool comes in. I mean, I'll tell you guys, we've literally had large manufacturing companies, large customers, well known, that have ran our pen test using college interns. Because again, the operator doesn't need to have the know-how or the knowledge or the certifications to do pen testing. They just need to learn the process, run through a couple clicks, and then reach out to our team, and we'll help kind of analyze and process those to drive action, be it policy, be it their tools may not be doing what they should do, so maybe we need to configure those properly. So things like that. But yeah, I mean, we've literally had interns run these for very large, well-known companies.
Nice. So a company engages with Airiam or Horizon 3. They do the test. So the end results is a consistent report that they get that they can use to improve their security. So what since you've been there and in recent years or recent months, what weaknesses are most commonly found? What's the one or two or several things that people and organizations usually say, oh, wow, we need to pay some attention to that, and we need to remediate or fix this vulnerability or weakness in the system?
Yeah, I kind of touched on this earlier, and so kind of the cool thing with customer success is we actually also own the cyber threat analytics team. We also own UX, so that helps us to gather input from customers. Hey, like, wouldn't it be cool if this button did this? Or I'd love to provide some feedback and be a partner here. But that also means that we have members from our team with my similar background, working for 3-letter agencies before, and doing kind of similar stuff. And now that they're working with us and taking the cyber approach, so it actually generated this year in review for us. And we looked at, actually, this is amazing too. So last year we did about 7,000 pen tests.
Wow, that's a lot.
So the cyber threat analyst went through and looked at the pen test as a whole. And what we did, we came up with kind of 3 overarching themes. Within these themes, we also have, very directed weaknesses. And that's really the way that we process this. So the 3 themes that we saw last year are that credential policies are weak and are often not enforced. The second theme that we saw was that patching is still rare, but in our case, fixing misconfigurations is even more rare. So, hey, I'll get into these a bit more, and we'll have to dive into the weaknesses themselves. And lastly is that companies may have security tools, and we've touched on this before, they're not fine-tuned. A lot of these tools aren't just, fire and forget, and it's going to do its thing. They need to be validated, they need to be tested, they need to be stressed in order to ensure that they're doing what they should be doing. So are they logging the right things? Are they alerting to the right things? Are they stopping? And oftentimes, just because they have the tool, they just operate under a false assumption that it's doing what it should be doing, without ever asking, well, how do we know it's doing what it should be doing? So those are the 3 overarching themes that we saw last year. So we're talking about credentials. In this case, malware-free attacks are really on the rise, right? And we identified that hackers don't necessarily hack in anymore, they log in. So that's based off the fact that, credential-based attacks, weaker reused credentials used across an organization, protocol credentials that are either standard, have never been changed, dumping credentials, those things all fall into that. Hey, our credential policies are weak. So what NodeZero does is says, hey, like, these are your weaknesses, these are your impacts, and now let's take that 30,000-foot view and really look at this as, well, how do I as a leader fix this? And when we're talking about credential policies, then hey, that should drive the leader to say, hey, there's probably a lack of training here. We really need to go through and hash out password training. We may need to change our existing password policy. We may need to look at MFA. So that's really one of the drivers that says, hey, this is what we saw, weak credentials. It falls under this theme, and it should drive this action. I'll stop there before I get into the other ones. But any feedback on that piece that you guys have seen in your business?
I think that you have hit the nail on the head. I think that it's funny the amount of patching that it reveals to us that is not done. So clients will think that they're patched and managed, but they're not, and or they have a machine that they didn't think was important that we're not managing. Maybe nobody knew about it, but NodeZero found it and really brought it up. And credential policies, a lot of people have old servers or had old servers, and maybe they've had upgrades since, but they're really running on AD the way it was, Active Directory the way it was back in like 2000 or 2003, with really loose credential policies, no SMB signing, that kind of thing. And NodeZero really runs through the network then when you have kind of wide open policies like that. So it's really helped us to focus on those kind of weaknesses. But configuration, huge issue too. That is I think that is going to be, even if all the patching systems were perfectly automated, even if everything worked perfectly, that is really where it's, we need that security validation. We need a tool to come in and validate. So even if everything else was perfect, we need that validation to make sure configuration's right. And I think that is going to be really important, for any size company. Even if you have the best crack security team, you need something to come in behind you, maybe continuously, and validate.
Yeah, that continuous validation is key. I think you touched on kind of the security aspects, and yeah, we saw CVEs that aren't patched, and what we're seeing is these aren't new CVEs. Like there is going to be a time, hey, something just dropped, hey, we have to go through change management, it may be X amount of time to get that, but we're seeing Eternal Blue, we're seeing Blue Key, we're seeing CVEs that have been around for years and years and years that have been talked about, in every channel, but they're still not patched, or they thought they were patched, but they're not. I think earlier you mentioned, hey, we may have some legacy equipment or something along those lines that we just can't patch, and that's totally fine. Because what we'll say is, hey, while we can't patch this based off of whatever configuration exists, what we need to do is either put a mitigating control in place, and NodeZero can still validate that. We'll validate that the vulnerability exists, but we can tell you that it's not exploitable anymore. And that's going to drop it down in prioritization and kind of risk criticality. But yeah, things like Blue Key, Eternal Blue, we're still seeing Heartbleed. We're seeing VMware was huge last year, right? There are a lot of new CVEs with VMware. So again, like those patches exist, and we often don't see that. Patching is a problem, but really what's lacking is that find, the fix, the verify after it, right? So we see that we need the patch. We think we implemented it. Okay, we're done. The last piece of that is verifying and validating, and that continuous validation. Some change control policy may come in and you may lose a configuration, or whatever it may be, and that's a thing that we're not seeing, and that's leading directly to direct kind of link to lack of patching in an organization, is lack of validation and verification on the back end.
All right, so credentials, patching, lack of configured tools are the top areas that was in the report, and so yeah, that's we'll put a link to the report in the description as well. So, thinking about it, NodeZero, it's an autonomous tool. Your customer success team, you're the human side. You help the people implement the tool and understand the readings. But are there ever any cases where you do recommend, a human-conducted pen test? The social engineering element, the physical element. Do you ever recommend that to some clients, or see some benefits in having that in conjunction with Horizon3 solution?
Yeah. One of the things you'll either, if you've watched some videos from our CEO, Snehal, or if you've talked to us from customer success side, we're not here to eliminate pen testers. There is certainly a need for skilled pen testers. So we're not here meant to replace them. Again, we're here to actually let them operate, again, at speed and scale. So lots of use cases here. I mean, one of them is hey, let NodeZero kind of take this low-hanging fruit. Let us work through this entire list of password spray. Let us work through this low-hanging vulnerabilities, these CVEs, and now you go carry the ball that last mile and go in and do some post-exploitation. So I think that's one of the key uses for it. And again, it kind of goes back to allow us, if you're doing a continuous pen testing of an organization, we can be that tool that, again, automates, schedules, and adds that repeatability. But again, you're the superhero, you the pen tester, the superhero of the story, and you're going to go in there and still do manual. If you were a web application pen tester guru, hey, go in there and focus on web apps. If you're focused on another aspect of pen testing, you are that SME, and you can take that and let us kind of handle the grunt work on the front end of it.
All right, so yeah, it's not one or the other. It's all working together for the end goal of the customer, the organization becoming more secure and having to act together to prevent ransomware and all that horrible stuff.
Yeah, you got it.
Nice. Great. So we've learned a lot. Art, any final questions from you for Alex before we wrap up?
I just really appreciate what Horizon3 is doing. I love the way that the company has evolved and the product has evolved, and it's going to continue to evolve. I'm glad that it's an integral part of our stack now, and that we're able to use it to provide such better solutions to our clients with that. As far as like the in-person pen testing versus the automated pen testing, I'd say that there are cases for that, where if you think about throwing NodeZero at a network, NodeZero is going to be loud. It's gonna try everything in the toolbox and go through and make its way through. So it'll show you it'll draw attention to the vulnerabilities and the exploits that you need to address. Where you may want a in-person pen test is that physical security to see if somebody's able to just walk in the building and plug in something. But also, if you want somebody to creep, if you want to see what an APT might experience going through your network and doing it slow and methodically and not raising alarm, that may be something where a in-person pen test might add value, whereas your security tooling, if it's configured at all correct, it's going to see that NodeZero is in operation. It's going to see that it's trying privilege escalation, it's trying lateral movement, it's trying these things. Where if you have a person who's being really creepy through your network, security tooling may not pick that up. So especially if they're logging in rather than hacking. So there's a use case for it, but I think, like Alex said, you can knock out 90% of the work using NodeZero and really reduce cost to the client and improve speed for the client.
Yeah, I think that social engineering piece is so key, and I know you've been on the tool, and we allow a user to kind of input some of that social engineering, right? Mm. So let's work under the assumption that there's already assumed breach. So I woke up one morning, and not with Horizon3, of course, in my past job, and I saw this email and said I got to click here, and I did it, and boom. Now they've collected credentials. So within the product, you can actually say, hey, NodeZero, take that perspective, and let's assume Art's credentials were compromised, Bill's credentials were compromised. Bill's an admin. Let's say Art's a user. What does that blast radius look like? And that's really where within the product you can say, hey, I got to know that Miami Dolphin is got to be somewhere in someone's password, or whatever. So you can add some of that social engineering aspect to make NodeZero essentially smarter, so that we'll run through some of those actions that a traditional human-based attacker would gather on their recon. Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, social engineering, there's something that can't be replaced, to see, hey, can I just knock on a door and enter a secure facility? That's really, that counterintelligence perspective and all that. So it's huge. That's something that just won't be replaced.
Yeah. Awesome. Alex, any final thoughts or takeaways for us here?
No, I'm just super excited. It was great meeting Art out in our conference. This partnership is just growing. So I'm super excited to be a part of your team, an extension of your team, and be on this ride along with you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Alex, for your time, and thank you, Art, for your time as always. That was great. I encourage any listeners to subscribe to the podcast and whatever platform they're listening in. New episodes will typically be released every other Wednesday. For more information on Horizon3, visit horizon3.ai. For more information on Airiam, visit airiam.com. And we are offering a one-time free autonomous penetration test that uses NodeZero in some elements. To request that, you can visit airiam.com/free-penetration-test. So thanks. Bye.